What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In last episode I showed you where the shop's going to go and generally what it's going to look like. Well, today my grader is on his way. He should be here within the hour, and by this afternoon this backyard should be transformed and ready for foundation and concrete. Alright, well, as you can see, Brian has been doing a killer job. He's been going for about 2.5 hours right now. I'm going to go ahead and stop the time lapse, let him do the rest of his work, and then after he's finished, I'll bring you back this afternoon and show you how it looks. Alright guys, so Brian completed probably about 30-40 minutes ago, and probably, I don't know if you can tell, but it's dropped like a foot and a half from what it was in the back. Now, I still have a little bit of a lip here, which I really didn't want. I kind of just wanted to come straight in and cut straight in and just remove all that dirt. But looking at it now, I realized that if I would have done that, I probably would have had to have started even further into the yard, and then I would have had to have gone over even further that way. So this is just an unfortunate thing that I'm gonna have to deal with, and I guess I'm gonna have to get some fill dirt eventually and kind of smooth it out to kind of make a slope up to the shop whenever we get that done. But it is what it is. As far as the pad goes, it's nice and level now. We did notice one thing after he was finished. So back here, and I don't know why, but back here, I don't know if you can see that, this is very smushy. So I dug this out, probably about 1.5 feet down is pretty solid dirt. Even though it's mixed with something, I don't know what it's mixed with. This is kind of how it looks here. Pretty much this whole corner right in here we're gonna have to do something with. We might have to bring in some dirt. I know we're going to be putting aggregate down underneath the slab, so maybe that'll take care of it. So I'll have to talk to my concrete people whenever they come to do the footings and stuff like that and see what exactly the plan is. Now if we walk over here, this is completely opposite of that. This stuff is rock hard. So majority of the pad is like this. It's nice and firm, but right over there in that corner, it's a little squishy. So we'll just have to figure that out and deal with it when the time comes. So in the intro, I basically talked about just getting this work done today. So I think what I'm gonna do is just make this one video, which includes the grading process and then also them doing the footings and putting in the pad. So in the next scene, you should be seeing the concrete guys coming out and getting the footers prepared. Ta-da! All right guys, as you can see, the contractors have already come out. They set up the forms and have prepped everything for the foundation and the slab, which is gonna be poured later on this week. So true to form, I didn't get a lot of B-roll of the process. There's a couple reasons why. One, my family was here. The kids were off from school while they were doing this, so the kids were very intrigued by everything that was going on. And here's actually some B-roll of my son. He wanted to assist these guys as much as possible, and he got this new John Deere Gator, so he thought that it would be fun to go and get some of the gravel that they were gonna put for the sub base underneath the slab. So he wanted to help them transport it from across the road to our backyard and dump it. So that's one of the things we did. I think the only B-roll that I got of the workers was when they already had all the rock over here and they were basically just fanning it out, and then they were also finishing the channels for the foundation. It has been completed, and I want to kind of walk you through some of the things and misconceptions about doing this, and some things that I've learned about it, and some of the things that I found will be helpful for you if you're going through the same process. A lot of things that I didn't know, and even up until this point that I thought were agreed upon, there was some miscommunication there. So I just want to walk through that right now and kind of like let you know where things stand. The first thing I want to point out here is the channels that's going to be for the foundation or the footings. So as you can see, there's no rock that's been put down. Now I'm going to show you the picture of what the building people that I purchased my building from. I'll show you the picture of what they have, and they actually show a 4-inch sub base to the footers. So when I was going through the process with my concrete guy, you know, we had talked about wanting to do gravel underneath the slab. And I thought when we talked about gravel underneath the slab, I thought that also included the footers as well, because that was the building plans that I had sent to a concrete guy. Come to find out, the rock or aggregate is only going to be under this slab portion. The reason for that is it actually takes more man hours, and it is a little more difficult to crush that rock to where it is compact enough to pass inspection. Because what the inspector does, they come out here and they kind of prod the ground to make sure that the foundation or the ground underneath is firm enough to support the foundation. So if you bring gravel out here and you don't compact it enough, and they go to prod and their stick or whatever they're using actually goes through it, you could pass inspection. So one, it is a little more money for the aggregate to be put under the footers. Two, it takes more man hours to actually get it done correctly, so that's going to be more money. And three, you kind of run the risk of whether that's going to pass inspection or not. Again, that was a miscommunication between me and the concrete contractor. But after talking with my contractor, I'm actually okay with it, because there's pros and cons to all of it. The pros is that, yes, you probably could get better water drainage from underneath the foundation if you had that aggregate under there. But also one of the cons is if it's not compacted properly enough, then you can also have shift in there, which you can have with soil as well. So I'm not really sure, you know, what's the right answer. I've seen people do it both ways in other videos, and this is actually red clay, and it is pretty hard where it's at right now. So I'm not too concerned about how the foundation is going to do over time with what it's going to be sitting on. Okay, so that covers the foundational part. And then another one of the things that we got done was the vapor barrier. And as you can see, it's already collecting condensation under there. Actually, as soon as they put this down, I would say within half an hour, condensation was already forming underneath. Now, why do you want a vapor barrier? Well, you want a vapor barrier because one, it keeps the humidity and keeps that moisture out of whatever shop you're gonna have. But then two, it also helps to keep the concrete from corroding and deteriorating. Anyways, we have a vapor barrier that's going to be down under the slab, and hopefully that gives longevity to the concrete and the building. Okay, next thing we have number 6 rebar, and this is basically where the 2-post lift is going to sit, right across here. So if you go right here in the middle, that's about 13 feet into the garage. That's where I was thinking of having the lift sit, and I wanted, you know, 2.5 feet of rebar on each side. So if I did wanted to move it, you know, more 12 feet or farther in, there's still going to be plenty of grid pattern for the support of the 2-post lift. Also, BenPak recommended that if you knew exactly where the lift was going to go, you could do a 4-foot by 4-foot square with the number 6 rebar, and that would suffice as long as you knew exactly where your posts were going to go. Since this is a fresh pour and I do know where everything was going to go, I was going to opt to do that, but then I thought that it would be even better to just tie in that whole part of the floor where the lift is going to sit, and then hopefully this just add more structure and rigidity and safety for having the lift in the garage. And right now the rebar grid is laying on the vapor barrier, but that is only because it is just there to keep the vapor barrier down and not to fly away in case of strong winds. And they are going to be putting chairs underneath it, and it should support it about halfway in between the concrete once it's poured. So you should have about 2.5 inches of concrete below and above the rebar grid. It brings me to the concrete. Now, one of the things that I had talked about with my concrete guy was wire mesh. Now, in my mind, this is what I had envisioned for wire mesh. People do use this, but I've come to find out through this process that wire mesh, at least for contractors that I've talked to here in North Carolina, it's different than what specifically I was thinking that I've seen in videos. So basically what I'm going to be getting put in, because as you can see, there's none of that wire mesh over top of the vapor barrier. So what wire mesh is, defined by these concrete guys, wire mesh is really fiber reinforced concrete. Let me do a quick voiceover here of what fiber reinforced concrete and wire mesh concrete is and the pros and cons for both of those. All right, so I jumped on my friend here chat box and I basically asked, what's the difference between fiber reinforced concrete and concrete with wire mesh? So the fibers that go into fiber reinforced concrete, here they are listed: steel fibers, glass fibers, synthetic fibers, and natural fibers. Okay, so that's basically going to be the composition of it. All right, so now let's go to the table and see the pros and cons of these two different methods. I don't know that I'm going to read every single one of these, but let's just kind of go through a couple of them. So for fiber reinforced concrete, strength and durability, offers increased tensile strength and crack resistance. Fibers help distribute stresses more evenly. Now let's go look at regular concrete with wire mesh. The wire mesh provides some reinforcement, but not as effective as redistributing stresses and preventing cracks. So there is a pro right there. Now let's look at ease of construction. So as far as the fiber reinforced concrete goes, it is easier because all this stuff gets mixed in when the concrete is being made before it gets put into the truck for distribution. All right, so let's look at regular concrete now. It does require more manual labor for laying the wire mesh. And then also, I think it is more skilled in the fact that while they are pouring the concrete, someone actually has to pull the wire mesh up off of the vapor barrier or the ground to make sure that it is floated in between the concrete. And now we'll just jump down to cost real quick. So it says that the reinforced is typically more expensive due to the cost of the fibers compared to the regular concrete, and wire mesh generally cheaper. Wire mesh is less costly than fiber. So I would say yes, the actual product may be cheaper, but I think you're going to be paying more in labor for them to be, one, laying that out appropriately if you do the wire mesh, and then also, like I said, for them to capture the wire mesh within the concrete as it's being poured and not just laying on the surface. That does take some skill and extra labor, and I would assume also extra cost. All right, so these are definitions that you are going to want to know if you are talking to a concrete contractor. Fiber reinforced concrete versus regular concrete with wire mesh. If they say you're getting concrete with wire mesh, as mine did, but they mean fiber reinforced concrete, just ask that question. I think either one of these would do well in their own right. I just like to know exactly what I am getting and what I am paying for. So that's basically the difference between fiber reinforced concrete and wire mesh concrete. I hope my experience with what I've been going through, getting all this stuff done, is actually going to help you guys. Also, the terminology of the stuff that I have found out while doing this job, I hope helps you guys if you decide to take on a project like this. So just know what you're asking for, or if there's something that you think that they're saying but you're not 100%, just make sure you ask them for clarification on exactly what that is so you know exactly what you're getting. But I'm not concerned about it. I think all of it's going to be fine. One other thing I'll say is that after the footings are done, which are 12 by 12 footings, and then there's going to be another 5 inches of concrete on top of that. So it's going to be a 5-inch slab and 12 by 12 footings all the way around. And the great thing about the forms and everything right now is that the inspector came out the other day. Everything has passed, and in 2 days we should be pouring the slab, and I'll try to do a better job of getting that content, because they're actually going to be using concrete buggies, which I've never even seen that in action before, but I'm really interested to see how that's going to work in getting the concrete from the truck back here to the backyard. So in the next clip, we should be pouring some concrete and getting this thing closer to completion. All right, guys. It is early Friday morning. The concrete truck has just arrived. That's the little buggy that they're going to be using to get the concrete to the back. So we'll see how long this takes today, and we'll follow them through the process. All right, guys, they just got the first bucket. It's going down, and we'll watch them as the day progresses. All right, so one of the things I just noticed is they were supposed to put the rebar on stands and he has not been putting them on the stands. He's just been lifting it up and putting concrete underneath. All right, so I just went and talked to the guy that's doing the concrete right now. Now, he is not the one that I spoke to about doing the concrete. He's just doing the work. So I told him, I said, these are supposed to be put on chairs. So it'll be 2.5 to 3 inches off the ground, and then you're gonna have that 2.5 to 3 inches of concrete on top of it. And he just kind of looked at me and he's like, yeah, it's supposed to be in between the concrete. And I said, yes, but that's why I wanted the chairs used, to make sure that it would be equal distance and it's not just a guessing game. And the guy that I actually contracted to do this job, who's supposed to be overseeing this, is not here, so he can't tell him that. I did text him, but now it seems like it's too late. So once it's time to go put the lift in, if there's something that's inconsistent or the installers don't want to put it in because something is not correct with that, then I guess he's just gonna have to come back and fix it. All right, so I just went and talked to the lead contractor and to the workers as well. They are going to fix the issue. They're gonna make sure that it is floated 2.5 inches between the slab. So it's gonna be right in between that 5 inches. I was just a little concerned about that because I know whenever you install the lift, they call for specific requirements. And the last thing I want is to finally get a lift out here to be installed and then something is not correct within the concrete or the rebar or where it sits to where they're not gonna install it. So everything looks like it's gonna be taken care of, and they're continuing their job, and hope no more hiccups for the rest of the day. All right, so just a quick update. This is about halfway through. We went through one truck, another truck just arrived, and this is 2 hours into the project, and it's actually going pretty quickly. Everything's looking pretty good. So yeah, hopefully in a couple more hours, everything will be poured and things will start getting refined. All right, guys, while I have some free time today, I'm gonna go ahead and show you what the finished pad looks like, what they did, and then also what's gonna be coming up in the next video. All right, so as I said before, the building that's gonna be on here is a 20 by 30. What the building contractors called for was 8 inches more width and length. So what they poured was a 20 foot, 8 inches by 30 foot, 8 inches. And the reason that the company wanted that is they want to make sure they had extra 4 inches all the way around to make sure that whenever they put the anchor bolts in, they had concrete and there wasn't gonna be any cracking or anything like that. Now, my first initial concern about having those 4 inches of concrete all the way around was gonna be water incursion. Because if you have that extra 4 inches out from the building, you run the risk of water running down and then into the building. And a lot of the concrete contractors warned me about that and said that could be a potential issue, but the building contractor said that they would not put it up unless they had that extra 4 inches all the way around. Now, there were a couple ways to handle that. You could do a slightly sloped edge from the 4 inches out, or you could do a step down of 3/4 of an inch, and then that would allow for the water to run off. So initially, most of the contractors I talked to didn't want to do either one of those options. Fortunately, the contractor that I did go with did not have an issue with it, and we actually did a 4-inch slope all the way around, and I'll show you that right now. So I don't know how well you're going to be able to see here, but it's just a slight slope, 4 inches in all the way around. But what that's going to be able to allow is for that water just to hit here at the side of the building. So the siding should come right here and then just run right away. And I did do secondary measurements just to make sure that it was all good. And from each one of those corners all the way around, it does measure 20 by 30 to each one of those corners. So it's very precise. So that siding should come down right over top of where the slope is. So I don't see any issues with it. The pad is completely level too. So when it does rain, it should just hit the siding, come straight down right onto the slope, and then run away from the building and the foundation. As far as relief cuts, I don't know if this is interesting to anybody or not, but the relief cut, they did straight down the middle, and then they did sections here every 10 feet. So this is divided up to 6 squares, and they're basically 10 by 10 for the whole pad. Now, the last thing I will note here is that if you look around the whole pad, you have varying degrees of concrete exposure on the sides. So back here in the back is probably the best that I've done so far. I actually cut this berm back a little bit more and took that dirt and started filling in. I'm actually probably going to bring fill dirt and bring it up right here, and that's about an inch slope down. So I'm going to be putting dirt all the way around here, around the whole perimeter, and then sloping it away. So hopefully water just runs down, hits the slope, and then off and away from the building as well. And then at the front is going to be the part that's going to require the most amount of dirt. So I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but it's a pretty good slope from the front of what's going to be the garage down here to the ground level. So I'm assuming, and I've calculated, somewhere between 7 to 15 yards of fill dirt for all of this to get it to the height that I want, and then have a nice slope away where it's not too dramatic. As of tomorrow, I have some topsoil coming in that's going to be for the back portions, because most of that fill dirt is where I want it, and then I'm just going to put topsoil so I can grow grass back there. But really for this front portion, it's going to take a good amount of fill dirt. I might do 5 yards at a time, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But eventually I want it to where it's a nice gradual slope away and an easy entrance into what's going to be the front of the garage. So besides some of the initial miscommunication we had as far as where aggregate was going to be put, and then also using the chairs for the rebar that were going to be there for the lift, other than that, everything went really smoothly. It was cool to see them, one, use the buggy, two, to see them like level out the concrete. And then I'd never seen anybody float concrete before, which is what gives it a really, really smooth surface and not the textured surface. And I don't know, I just thought that was really cool to watch those guys work and do the floating. And my kids absolutely loved it. They sat out here for, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes or something, just watching these guys float the concrete, and just mesmerized. So overall, it was a very good experience. I don't like being here for these kind of projects when it's being done at the house because I get so focused on it, and it's kind of intense for me, and also a little stressful. But I'm glad I was here that day, because I was able to raise some concerns and ask some questions about stuff. And the guy's company that I used for this was an absolute legend. Like, he was great to work with. He answered all my questions. Some of the stuff that may be commonplace for him in his industry that I might have been asking, he didn't make me feel as if it was a dumb question or not. He just answered all my questions that I had. So I will leave his information. If you're in the Charlotte, Harrisburg, Concord, North Carolina area, and you need concrete or any other kind of yard work done, I will leave his information down in the description box below. Great guy to work with, and I'm actually going to use him for some other projects here around the house. But with all that being said, I have already taken pictures all the way around the concrete slab. I have sent it to the building manufacturer, and they have already texted me back and let me know that my request has been received, and it has started the process of putting all the building pieces together. And then soon they should be giving me a scheduling date, and hopefully within the next couple months we'll see this thing getting built. So if you've enjoyed this build series so far and you want to keep up with the progression of the shop, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Be sure to like this video, and as always, thank you for watching.